The champion is the simplest and most basic fighter subclass, but that's not a bad thing. If you're new to the fighter or just want a simple character to play, champion is the fighter subclass for you. It might not just be the perfect introductory subclass for a fighter, but maybe the perfect introductory class for all of D&D 5th edition. And packed within the champion is some really solid design, so let me tell you why you should play a champion fighter. This guide is based on my personal experiences and opinions. I won't be going over basic subclass information because you can probably read. I've either played or DM'd for all the fighter subclasses, and my opinions almost certainly won't align with the D&D community at large. I will be ranking the subclass based on 5 criteria. I will be scrutinizing subclass features gotten at later levels more intensely, because most players aren't going to make it past 10th level with a character, so my analysis is weighted more towards earlier subclass features. With all that out of the way, let's begin. We can't talk about the champion fighter without acknowledging that it is new player friendly. The champion is just the fighter, but a bit better. And I think simplicity is important. Because while yes, some people want to have a character that can do everything, they want to have a character that can output insane amounts of damage or has the AC of a Tarask, but other players just want to sit down and play a game with their friends. They want to turn their brains off for 2, 3, 4 hours. They don't want an intricate character to play. Not everybody wants to read a doctoral thesis when looking over a character sheet. There is elegance in simplicity, and it is here in that place of simple elegance that we find the champion fighter. For its 3rd level feature, you get improved critical hits. It's so simple. Instead of scoring a critical hit when you roll a natural 20, it's now when you roll a 19 or a 20. And it's a lot of fun. Everybody likes more critical hits. They bring this excitement and flair into the game. And to use this feature, you don't need to pull off any insane tactical combos or set anything up or have all these unique actions. No. It's just all the time when you roll a 19 or a 20 on a weapon attack, you score a critical hit. It is as simple as that. Plus you gain other simple yet powerful features like Remarkable Athlete. This just makes your strength, dexterity, and constitution checks that much better and is good for overall improving your fighter. For new players, flat bonuses are often far better than extra abilities. You don't need to worry about any other details as you're just trying to understand the game, and the numbers are right there on the character sheet. Even some veteran players piloting these massively complicated character sheets can forget things that they can do. This is not to mention if you're in a D&D campaign where your DM will allow you to swap out the basic standard ability score used with certain skill checks in favor of others. As an example, using your strength score in place of your charisma score when making an intimidation check. In this situation, you are gaining half proficiency on that intimidation check because of Remarkable Athlete. Now, sometimes Remarkable Athlete is situational, but it's never overly complicated. And I think that is important. Plus, I think it's important to acknowledge that the champion has very solid final levels. At 10th level, you're gaining an extra fighting style, which is great, especially after Tasha's Cauldron of Everything released. There are now so many great options to pick up. And at 15th level, your crit range now goes from an 18 to a 20, which is really strong in game. You are going to be critting often, especially if you use things like flanking rules, which give you advantage. Additionally, if you're using homebrew critical hit rules like the Perkins crit, Superior Critical is an S tier ability for the volume of damage it outputs. And again, it's so simple to use and player friendly. And the 18th level ability Survivor is fine. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just fine. On average, you're probably going to be healing 8 to 9 hit points. And that builds up over a fight. Honestly though, could be better for an 18th level ability. Health gain could be doubled and still might be a tad underpowered. I've also noticed players forgetting about this healing at later levels pretty often, so it's something to keep in mind. But honestly, most D&D campaigns don't go anywhere near that level, so it's not really something to worry about. If you're playing a champion fighter, all you need to know is that you should be trying to get advantage as much as possible, whether that be flanking an enemy with a teammate, knocking them prone, or using a buff provided to you by another member of your party. You want to be rolling as many d20s in combat as possible because that increases your chance of a critical hit. You're playing a numbers game here. you are twice as likely to score a critical hit as anyone else in your party. Take advantage of that. But otherwise, just focus on doing the best you can in roleplay and learning the game, or just enjoying the presence of the people around you. And I think now it's time that we should talk about concepts for the champion fighter. The champion fighter doesn't really come with a core concept, but that's its strength in my opinion. This is a character that is just good with weapons. Some people claim fighters are boring, but I don't think that's true at all. A subclass like the champion fighter gets out of the way and lets you build whatever character you want, and its mechanics will always fit that vision. There are many characters in fiction who are just fighters. It's how we play those characters that makes them interesting. The mechanics your class offers you does not make your D&D character interesting. It's how you play them, what you put into your backstory, and how you roleplay them when the game is actually being conducted. If you're playing a champion fighter, you should feel free to be creative. And at some point, if you want to expand into another class, you absolutely can. So let's talk about multiclassing. And you might be asking, alright, well, what should I multiclass into if I'm a champion fighter? What are some good options? Everything. You can multiclass everything if you choose a champion fighter. This is the subclass you choose for fighter if you know you want to multiclass, but you're not really sure what class you want to use. Paladins, rogues, rangers, barbarians, monks, and almost every other class can benefit from 3 levels of a champion fighter. Seriously, that 3rd level improved critical ability is fantastic. If you're thinking about multiclassing your champion fighter, do not be afraid. With how the class is set up, it really meshes with just about everything. You could even multiclass into a blade singer or a war wizard and you'd still probably be fine. So if you're a champion fighter, don't fear multiclassing. It can provide a little bit of extra spice to your character, but it's also going to make your champion a little bit more complicated. And there is literally nothing wrong with taking your champion fighter to level 20. Don't listen to everyone else on the internet. You're gonna be fine. Spellcasters and other classes can't do it alone without marshals at higher levels. They're gonna need you. Will you be as effective as a champion fighter? Probably not. But most campaigns end far before that point, so you'll be fine. But now I'm going to start talking about some of the dislikes I have with the champion fighter. And many new players have asked me, hey, I heard the champion fighter was a bit underpowered. Do you think that's true? And yes, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Is the champion fighter as mechanically powerful as some of the other fighter subclasses? No, it's not. In fact, almost every other fighter subclass is more mechanically powerful than the champion. But like we've been saying, I admire the simplicity of the champion fighter. What I do dislike, though, is that it could have been the critical hit subclass. There isn't another subclass that takes full advantage of increasing critical hits. Also, at later levels, it can get a little boring. While simple at first, it doesn't offer new mechanics later on for when new players have begun to understand the core concept of the class and the game in general. The champion fighter kind of plateaus after a certain point, and that point really depends on the player. Now luckily, since the champion fighter can multiclass so well, at any point a new player can pull the ripcord and jump over to another class. And you can engage with a whole new system of mechanics for the rest of the game. So while the champion fighter does have its weaknesses, I think it occupies an extremely important spot in D&D 5th edition. Not every subclass needs to be the most powerful thing. You need a range of options. And I think this being the simple fighter subclass that any new player can pick up is incredibly important, and has been important for the continued success of D&D 5th edition. For years, as D&D 5th edition was growing in popularity, the champion fighter wasn't just the most popular fighter subclass, it was the most popular subclass in all of D&D 5th edition. So don't sleep on the champion fighter. But now, let's get to the ratings. We have 5 categories: roleplay, offensive, defensive, utility, and X Factor. X Factor being what makes this general subclass unique from all the other fighter subclasses. For roleplay, we're looking at a 12 out of 20. The archetype of a warrior who is physically strong and capable is super versatile. You can make an infinite number of characters work with this subclass. Some subclasses have a very specific backstory baked into their mechanics, but I really value the champion's freedom. but since it really doesn't have much more beyond that, it's sitting at a strong 12 out of 20. For offensive, we have an 11 out of 20. More critical hits are great, but they are random. Some nights you just might be rolling terribly and you don't score one critical hit. I would have personally liked to see the designers of 5th edition dive deeper into this core concept. And maybe at later levels I would have liked to see more offensive capabilities. Now, at 10th level, the fighting styles that you gain access to have improved over time, so you can go more offensive. But I can't put the champion fighter any higher than 11 out of 20. As for the defensive category, it's a 7 out of 20. As a champion fighter, you get this limited defense. Now, choosing additional fighting styles can improve this defense, but later level abilities like Survivor are underpowered for its level, and it's gotten really late. Maybe I could have gone even lower with this score, but I'm pretty comfortable giving the champion a 7 out of 20. For utility, I'm giving the champion fighter a 10 out of 20. Remarkable Athlete is a good feature. You're probably going to get significant use out of it when you're playing through a campaign. It provides an average amount of utility at those earlier levels that most players are going to be the most active in. But apart from Remarkable Athlete, you don't really have any other utility features, so I can't put it any higher than 10 out of 20. It is a solidly average subclass when it comes to the utility that it provides. And then for its X Factor, again, we're going to go a solid 10 out of 20. I would have wanted more done with the critical hit mechanics, of course. However, the mechanic of getting more critical hits over 17 levels is fun. The dopamine that goes through your brain when you score a critical hit on a 19 is indescribable. And over the course of a D&D campaign, that can't be overlooked. Plus, we have to take into account just how well this subclass fits in to basically any other class. So for that reason, even though they could have done more with this central concept, I'm giving the X Factor a solid 10 out of 20. So at the end of the day, the champion fighter comes in at a very solid, very average 50 out of 100. It is the most average fighter, and it's also the benchmark for the class. I think that this should be the floor. If you have a fighter subclass that is worse than a champion fighter, something is wrong. Every other subclass we look at should be above a champion fighter. But if you're wanting more information on how to actually play the fighter class, check out this video right here. It's my entire guide teaching you how to play a fighter. And thank you for entering the dungeon.